The movie opens with a couple bringing their son, Christian Wolff, to the Harbor Neuroscience Institute in New Hampshire, hoping to better understand his condition. Chris is diagnosed with a high-functioning form of autism. They mention that the father's military career requires frequent relocations. The director offers to let Chris stay at the institute, but the father declines, insisting that Chris shouldn't be shielded from things that upset him. He needs to face them to function in the real world. In the waiting area, young Chris quietly chants nursery rhymes while working on a puzzle. When he realizes the last piece is missing, he becomes distressed. His brother helps him search. A little girl named Justine, the mute daughter of the institute's director, finds the missing piece and gives it to Chris, calming him down. In the present day, Chris is now an accountant. In his office, he assists an elderly couple, Frank and Dolores, with tax strategies to maximize their refunds. They're thankful, and Frank invites Chris to practice shooting on their land whenever he likes. Meanwhile, the director of the U.S. Treasury Department, Ray King, summons an analyst named Marybeth Medina. He compliments her skills, but questions why she hasn't advanced further in her career. She claims she's content with her current role. But King challenges her honesty by showing old arrest records. He warns her that lying on a federal job application is a crime and says her past should have disqualified her. King then assigns Marybeth a task to investigate a mysterious figure known only as the accountant, who manages finances for criminal organizations and has been linked to murders. King demands she uncover his identity and close the case by the end of the month or lose her job. Chris returns home, prepares a simple dinner, and follows a strict nightly routine. Before bed, he turns on loud, heavy metal music and strobe lights, then uses a wooden rod to painfully massage his shins, part of his sensory regulation. As he lies in bed, he recalls a painful memory of his mother abandoning the family during Christmas. After taking his medication, he goes to sleep. Later, Chris visits Frank and Dolores' property for target practice. Frank is stunned by Chris's impressive shooting skills. Chris then heads to his storage unit, where he keeps an airstream filled with high-value items, rare collectibles, valuable artwork, stacks of cash in multiple currencies, and an arsenal of weapons. He's woken by a call from a British woman, clearly his assistant, who warns that he's attracting too much attention and suggests he take on some legitimate clients. Chris hesitantly agrees. He then meets with executives at the Robotics Corporation, Living Robotics, to audit their finances. They explain that their internal accountant has discovered financial discrepancies and they suspect someone is embezzling company funds. Chris accepts the job and says he'll begin his investigation the next morning. Marybeth continues her investigation by examining photos of the accountant. She spots one image where part of his face is visible, crops it, and sends it to the facial recognition department for analysis. Meanwhile, in Switzerland, Braxton, a violent enforcer hired to punish corrupt businessmen, confronts a man in a parking garage just as he's about to drive off. Holding a gun to the man's head, Brax forces him to promise to stop cheating companies out of money. When words don't work, Brax beats him until he agrees, then leaves. Back at Living Robotics, Chris heads to the conference room, where he's been assigned to work and finds a woman asleep at the table. He awkwardly wakes her and she apologizes, introducing herself as Dana Cummings, the employee who first discovered the missing funds. She begins explaining the case and assumes they'll be working together, but Chris firmly states he prefers to work alone. Dana leaves, and Chris begins his analysis. Elsewhere, during a press event, Marybeth receives a call from Homeland Security regarding the photo she submitted. They've matched an audio recording from one of the accountant's violent incidents, capturing a man pleading for his life moments before being killed. Homeland Security forwards the clip to Marybeth for review. During lunch, Dana sits beside Chris and tries to strike up a conversation. Chris makes an effort to respond, but his social awkwardness is evident. Dana shares a bit about her father, explaining he inspired her to pursue a career in accounting. Back in the conference room, Chris dives into his work. He fills the whiteboard with calculations and, running out of space, continues writing equations across the surrounding windows. After intense effort, he finally makes a breakthrough. Meanwhile, Marybeth listens repeatedly to the audio clip at home. Using software to isolate voices, she detects the accountant quietly reciting a nursery rhyme, which gives her a new lead. Chris eagerly shares his findings with Dana, showing that someone is funneling money into a fake company. Before he can name the culprit, one of the shareholders interrupts, pressing him for answers. Chris explains he's not ready to name anyone yet and still needs more time to confirm his findings. That night, Brax pays a visit to one of the company's shareholders. He corners the man at his home and gives him a brutal choice: inject himself with insulin to make it look like a suicide so his wife can collect life insurance, or refuse and risk both of their lives. The man chooses to go through with the injection the next day when Chris returns to the conference room. He finds janitors erasing all of his work from the windows. He tells them to stop, but the company's owner enters and informs Chris that his best friend, the shareholder, took his own life out of guilt for embezzling. He instructs Chris to drop the investigation. Chris is deeply frustrated that he wasn't allowed to complete his work. Back at home, Chris engages in another intense ritual, blasting heavy metal music, flashing strobe lights, and aggressively hitting his shins with a wooden rod. He flashes back to the painful memory of his mother leaving, grows overwhelmed, breaks the rod over his leg, and throws away his medication bottle. After calming himself down, he takes the pills and goes to sleep. The next morning, Chris heads out and notices a car tailing him. He returns to his client's property to practice shooting and is triggered by a childhood memory. He and Brax were forced to fight each other under the supervision of a brutal trainer hired by their father. Despite their injuries, their dad insisted they keep going, claiming they hadn't had enough. Meanwhile, inside the house, two thugs are holding the couple hostage. One forces the wife to lure Chris inside, but as they open the door, Chris shoots the thug from outside. The other thug forces the couple into a truck and tries to escape with them. But Chris shoots at the vehicle, forcing it to stop. He pulls the thug out, uses his belt to strangle him, and interrogates him. The thug admits he doesn't know who's behind the attack, only that the order was to kill Chris and Dana. Chris finishes him off and leaves to protect Dana. At Dana's apartment complex, a man shadows her and gets into the elevator with her. Chris arrives just in time and sneaks in through the back, taking the stairs. When Dana reaches her apartment, two fake delivery men barge in and attempt to subdue her. She fights back and hides in the bathroom. Chris breaks into the apartment, kills both attackers, and tells Dana she has to come with him. Elsewhere, Brax receives word that his men have been killed by the accountant. Chris takes Dana to his hidden trailer and asks her to wait outside while he prepares. Ignoring him, she steps inside and is shocked to see the stash of money, weapons and rare items. She questions him about it, but Chris struggles to provide clear answers. Meanwhile, Marybeth gets a call from the language services team about the audio she submitted. They suggest that the man she's investigating may have experienced childhood trauma or could have a neurological condition, possibly explaining why he recites nursery rhymes under stress. Determined to find a lead, Marybeth visits the IRS and works with an agent to cross-reference known aliases of the accountant with individuals reporting high income. Later, Chris takes Dana to a luxury hotel to keep her safe. Curious about his combat skills, she asks him how he learned to fight. He explains that his father, a military man, forced him to train so he could defend himself against bullies. Chris also opens up about having autism and how hard it is for him to connect with people, even though he deeply wants to. Dana responds with a personal story of her own, how she once learned to count cards just to win enough money to buy a dress in high school. She wore it only once, but did it hoping to fit in. The moment grows tender, and Dana leans in to kiss Chris. However, he pulls away, suddenly struck by a realization. The money being siphoned from the robotics company wasn't stolen. It was reinvested to generate even larger profits. Later on, Chris tails Brax down the street, but Brax notices and opens fire on him. Undeterred, Chris keeps pursuing and eventually ends up in a hotel room belonging to one of the company's shareholders, only to find her already dead from a gunshot. At the IRA's office, Marybeth continues working with an employee and finally uncovers the accountant's true identity, Chris. They learn that he works out of a modest accounting firm located in a building tied to several cash-based businesses, enterprises he owns and uses to obscure his real income. Marybeth reports this to King, also noting that most of Chris's earnings are anonymously donated to neuroscience research. When Chris returns to the hotel room where Dana is hiding, he finds her asleep on the couch. A memory surfaces of a time when his father forced him and his brother to retaliate against a group of boys who had bullied Chris at school. Realizing the danger Dana is in, Chris decides to leave her out of it. He quietly packs his things and walks away. Meanwhile, King and Marybeth lead a team through Chris's home. They document his unusual lifestyle. Finding untraceable weapons and an advanced security system, the investigation confirms how carefully Chris has hidden his double life. Elsewhere, Brax is hired by the owner of the robotics company to install security cameras in his house as a precaution, fearing Chris might target him next. Later, King dismisses the rest of the team, choosing to stay behind with Marybeth to talk privately. He asks about her past arrest. And she explains that she once tried to kill a drug dealer who had been selling to her sister, and she doesn't regret it. In turn, King shares how long he's been chasing the accountant and the personal cost of the pursuit. He reveals that he was actually present at the hotel where the infamous audio was recorded. He heard Chris kill the man firsthand. Chris had once cornered King at gunpoint and asked if he was a good father. When King said yes, Chris spared his life. King took that moment as a sign to walk away from law enforcement. However, just as he was preparing to leave his office for good, he received a call from a British woman who tipped him off about an illegal deal. That call convinced him to stay on the job, using her as a secret informant. King later tracked down Chris's former cellmate, who had been a federal informant. After his release, the criminals he once worked with found him, tortured him and killed him. When a guard told Chris what happened, he snapped and broke out of prison. Later, Chris attended his mother's funeral with his father. When they were asked to leave, Chris had a meltdown and a security guard opened fire. Chris's father shielded him from the bullet and was killed. Marybeth asks why King is sharing all of this, and he explains that he wants her to take over once he retires in 7 months. He wants her to be the one to answer the British informant's calls. Just then, the landline in Chris's house rings and Marybeth picks up. The British woman is on the other end, providing a lead related to the robotics company. Meanwhile, at the company owner's home, Brax is on security duty when Chris arrives. Brax dispatches several men to intercept him, but Chris eliminates all but one whom he spares to gather intel on the house's layout. Despite taking multiple injuries, Chris pushes forward, systematically killing every attacker Brax sends after him. Watching the footage, Brax suddenly recognizes Chris as his long-lost brother and calls off the assault. He leaves the control room to meet Chris while the company owner takes over monitoring the cameras. When they finally come face to face, Brax is angry and emotional. He lashes out at Chris for disappearing and not contacting him for over a decade. And especially for attending their mother's funeral alone, Brax blames Chris for their father's death, and in an effort to let his brother vent, Chris allows him to hit him. After taking a few punches, Chris pulls a gun on Brax, not to threaten him, but to regain control and de-escalate the situation. Once Brax cools down, the brothers reconcile. Just then, the company owner enters, confused and furious that Brax hasn't eliminated Chris. Without hesitation, Chris shoots him dead, then resumes his conversation with Brax. Before leaving, Chris tells him they'll reconnect in a week to catch up properly. Elsewhere, a new couple visits the neuroscience center for help with their autistic son. The boy wanders into a room where he meets Justine, the same girl who once helped Chris with a puzzle as a child. Now the director's daughter, Justine, is non-verbal but uses an advanced communication laptop. When she demonstrates it, the voice from the computer is the same British voice that has been assisting Chris all along. Back at her apartment, Dana returns to clean up and receives a package. Inside, she finds what appears to be a standard painting, but as she examines it, she discovers it's just a cover. Peeling it away, she uncovers an expensive original piece she recognizes one of the valuable artworks from Chris's trailer. If you enjoyed this video, don't be shy to hit the like button. And if you disliked it, hit the dislike button twice, just to be sure. It would be best if you watched the whole movie. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe for more videos like this.